Hey guys, Will here. So today in front of us we have the Fanatec Podium steering wheel Monte Carlo Rally. Now this is an interesting one, just like what we saw with the BMW M4 GT3 wheel previously. This isn't a replica, this is actually the exact wheel that won the 2022 Monte Carlo Rally in the hands of Sebastien Loeb. Now this particular setup that we have here is just one configuration that's available with the modules that we have here. So this is a modular style wheel. You can buy the button box separately from the rim and the hub, and there's a few different configurations that you can build depending on your particular needs and budget. You can also use this button box with completely different style rims as well if you're looking at driving something completely different from rally or drifting. So we're going to be taking a deep dive into this today, showing you everything that I think you need to know to make a decision on whether this might be the wheel for you or whether this button module might be perfect combined with a different rim for your particular needs. So let's dive in. Okay, so quite a lot to get through today. We'll try to get through it all as quickly as we possibly can. But before we get started, firstly, I do need to say a big thank you to Fanatec for sending across this wheel for us to check out today. Now, as you guys know, we like to cross-compare against some other wheels, some other options for you guys in our videos. So it's important that you guys are aware that everything that we're going to be comparing to today has all been sent to us under exactly the same conditions. So if you do decide you want to pick up any of the gear that we talk about, whether it's Fanatec or another brand in today's video, there are some links down in the description below. Those are an awesome way of helping support our work here at Boosted Media at no additional cost to you. That's just something that's available to you if you find our content of benefit and you want to help support us in return. So we really appreciate your support there. Now, another thing that I want to mention as well is, and this is a bit of an elephant in the room at the moment when it comes to Fanatec. So they are having some issues in two different areas. Firstly, customer support as well as shipping time frames. Now, as the time that we're recording this, it does seem like they're starting to get back on top of the shipping side of things. There are a number of people that were impacted specifically late last year, so around sort of September, October, November and Black Friday. A lot of people that placed orders within that time frame still haven't received their goods, and that is, obviously a big problem, something that they definitely need to get on top of very quickly, and they do definitely need to communicate with those customers better than they have been as well, in my opinion. A lot of people are feeling like they've been left in the dark with regards to that. Now, from my own observation, and I would definitely recommend doing your own research with this as well, but I've been keeping a pretty close eye on this, and it does seem like, at least in the last couple of weeks, they do seem to be getting back on top of regular shipping. So it seems like if you place an order around the time that we're recording this, at least things are shipping out in a more timely manner. But I can't vouch for every single person, and I'm sure that there will be some people that are watching this video that have placed an order recently and haven't received their gear, and will be quite angry with me for saying that. But it does seem like they're starting to get on top of things. Just do your own research there. There's actually a dedicated thread on the Fanatec subreddit where people are able to share their experiences, and I'm seeing more positive experiences popping up there recently, but still plenty of people complaining as well about various different aspects of the customer experience at the moment. So check it out for yourselves, guys. I just want to make sure that you're aware that there are some issues going on there with regards to shipping. So if you are looking at buying some Fanatec gear at the moment, it is important that you're aware of that. Now, the other side to that, as I touched on, is also customer support, and that does seem to be still a pretty big issue. Under normal conditions, you expect to wait with Fanatec 2 to 3, maybe 4 working days to receive a response to any sort of customer inquiry. At the moment, it appears to have blown out to around sort of 2 to 3 weeks, if not more. There's some cases that I'm seeing of people that have been waiting months and not gotten a response at all. So basically, that was, without going into all the details, there was a specific issue back in sort of September, October, November that was then exacerbated by the massive amount of orders that they received in November with Black Friday. And then it's sort of just, they've not been able to get back on top of things from there. So that obviously impacts people that are wanting to do RMAs. Perhaps you've got an issue with a brand new product that's just arrived. It can be difficult to get a response out of them if you need to get a replacement or send it off for repair or something like that. So again, just something to be aware of for you guys. Do your own research there. Check out all the various different online forums to get a better picture, and decide for yourselves whether or not you're comfortable ordering from Fanatec at this point in time. So customer service issues, delays there, and also some potential issues with shipping delays as well. So I'm not going to harp on about it any more than that. I think that those are the facts that you guys need to be aware of. What I would really appreciate though is that if you can share your experiences, good and bad, both down in the comments. I think that's probably the most valuable way that people can get an idea from our own audience what the current experience is like, and that's something that can kind of I guess evolve over time as well for people that are watching this video later on down the line. So leave a comment down below. Let us know what your experience has been like recently dealing with Fanatec as well. That would be super helpful for the people that are watching this video. But let's move on now and talk about pricing. I mentioned that this is a modular style wheel. That means that you can buy each of the components that go into this wheel individually. You can also mix and match things as well to suit your own personal preference. Now, they do a discount when you bundle them together in the configuration that you see here, as well as the Sweden configuration. And that configuration uses the CLUBSPORT universal hub with magnetic shifter paddles. This is also Xbox compatible. We'll talk about compatibility in just a minute. And that also combines the wheel with the replica version of the Sparco rim, rather than the genuine Sparco R383, which you see on this particular wheel. Now, we did a dedicated video a little while ago, which I'll link down in the description below, having a look at a bunch of new rim options that are available from Fanatec. Most of those are compatible with this rally module, and we covered that in that particular video. So definitely check that out if you're interested in more information there, but we will cover it in a bit of detail in today's video as well for you. So essentially, there's two configurations that are available with a bundle discount. The Monte Carlo version, as we see here, which is the exact same wheel that was used by Sebastien Loeb in the 2022 and 2023 Ford Puma Hybrid Rally 1 WRC car that actually won the Monte Carlo Rally with M Sport in 2022. So two really important things here. Firstly, this particular configuration doesn't come with any shifters. It's also not Xbox compatible. Now, if you have a PlayStation compatible wheelbase, you will have PlayStation compatibility. As you guys should hopefully be aware of by now, Xbox compatibility comes from a security chip inside the hub or the button module, whereas PlayStation compatibility comes from a security chip inside the wheelbase. So no shifters on the Podium version, and also no Xbox compatibility. If you do buy the CLUBSPORT version, that does come with the Xbox compatible universal hub. So you will have Xbox, PlayStation if you have a PlayStation compatible base, and of course PC compatibility. So a couple of things to be aware of there. Now, pricing wise, you're looking at $699.95 US dollars or euro for the Monte Carlo version, as you see here. That equates to $1,299.95 Australian. So it is quite a lot more expensive in Australia, even factoring in the conversion rate there. That is due to import duties, taxes, and whatnot. So they do distribute from a local warehouse here in Australia if you are ordering from Australia. So you're not going to have to pay GST and import duties on top. It will ship locally. So that's the reason why there's a bit more of a jump in price there than what you might be used to seeing from some other manufacturers that ship internationally. You end up having to pay import duties and taxes. But again, do just be aware of the various different import duties and taxes that might be relevant to you in your particular location around the world. Now, as you just talked about with the Podium bundle, there's no shifters included, but it does use the Podium hub, which is compatible with both the CLUBSPORT magnetic paddle module, which we've reviewed individually in the past, as well as the advanced paddle module, which we've also had a look at. So if you're looking at the CLUBSPORT paddle module, which is just magnetic paddle shifters, and that's it, no other buttons or levers, you're looking at an extra $99.95 US dollars or euro for that guy. If you're wanting to step it up to the advanced paddle module, which gives you a couple of extra buttons as well as analog paddles, which you can use for a bite point clutch to map to your handbrake or to any other function that you want. So basically, it's an arbitrary axis, analog axis that you can just map to whatever you want. If you want the advanced paddle module, you're looking at $179.95 US dollars or euro extra on top of the cost of the wheel. Now, the reason why they do it that way is obviously being a genuine wheel that they used in the real rally car. At the moment, most WRC cars, at least as far as I'm aware, don't actually have any paddles on the wheel themselves. They're all using shifters off to the side. That has gone through a couple of different phases over the years. For a while, a lot of the cars had a push-pull style shifter on the wheel itself. For a while, they also had fixed shifters that rotated with the wheel. You can imagine with the chaotic movement that you get of the steering wheel inside a rally car, at the moment at least, drivers seem to prefer using a shifter off to the side because it's always in a fixed location. It's not kind of thrashing around with the wheel. So that's the reason for that. But obviously, if you're looking for a more versatile setup that you can use for a variety of different styles of driving, then shifters are definitely something that you probably want to look at adding to the wheel. And that's definitely one of the strengths I think you have with this particular wheel. It is very versatile, 330 millimeters, so you're probably not going to want to drive with Formula One cars or something like that. But for general sort of street car driving, rally, drifting, this is pretty much going to have you covered. So of course, it's going to come down to exactly what you're going to want to use the wheel for, but definitely worth at least considering picking up some magnetic paddle modules at the same time as you're picking up one of these wheels, I think. Now, the other version of the wheel that's available with the bundle discount is the CLUBSPORT Sweden version. So that comes with the Universal Hub V2 for Xbox, as well as the replica wheel that we looked at just a moment ago. Now, two really important things to be aware of here. Firstly, Xbox compatibility is available on this particular configuration. As we mentioned, not available on the Podium version. And you'll also notice pre-installed is that CLUBSPORT paddle module. Now, you might notice as well, when you get the CLUBSPORT magnetic paddle module pre-installed on the V2 hub, it does come with metal shifter paddles, whereas when you order it as a separate item for whatever wheel you want to put it on, it does come with carbon fiber paddles. So not really what I would say is a overly significant difference between the two. Obviously the metal does feel cold to touch, but the carbon fiber does have a little bit more flex to it than what you get with the metal version. So not a massive difference there, but just one thing to be aware of. So pricing wise on the Sweden version, you're looking at $549.95 US dollars or euro, or $899.95 if you're in Australia. Now there is one other really important thing that you need to be aware of before you start looking at the value proposition between the two of them. That is the fact that the Podium version of the wheel does come with the QR2 Pro, which just on its own is $200 US dollars. Now, of course, this is the Motorsport FIA approved grade version of their QR2, and we do have a dedicated video talking about all the various different versions of the QR2 and my recommendations there. But there is also the standard version, which is also metal. It's cast aluminium as opposed to CNC machine billet aluminium. For all intents and purposes, rigidity-wise, performance-wise, it operates exactly the same way when you're up and driving. So there's not really any need to spend that extra money on the Pro version. If you're looking at the CLUBSPORT Sweden version of the wheel, just keep in mind that does come with a QR1 by default, at least at the time that we're recording this video. Now, they have told us that they will be transitioning across to including QR2 with all of their wheels. When they announced it back in sort of I think it was end of Q3 2023, they said it would be a 2-year transition. So it might still be quite some time, but at the point in time when you're watching this video, it is important just check to see what version of the quick release these hubs are shipping with, because it may change from when we're recording this. But at this point in time, at least, regardless of whether you want to go with a QR2 Lite, Standard or Pro, like what you get on the Monte Carlo version, you will be looking at a significant additional cost. So just be aware of that as well. Now, I would recommend going with the QR2 Standard. As I mentioned, there's not really any practical need to step up to the Pro. So if you wanted to buy the Sweden version of the wheel but want a QR2 quick release, I would recommend going with the Standard, which is going to be an extra $100 US dollars or euro, or $169.90 if you're in Australia. So that takes the total price for the Sweden version up to €649.95 euro or US dollars. So it's still quite a significant price difference if you're in Australia, but in the US or Europe, not quite such a big jump. Just do keep in mind, of course, you don't get shifters or Xbox compatibility on the Podium version. So if those two things are important to you, it may sway you in the direction of this one. But yeah, if you're buying the Sweden version but want to upgrade to a QR2 Standard, you're looking at $50 US dollars or euro less expensive than what you get with the Podium version, which comes with the Podium hub and the genuine Sparco rim. Whether or not those things are important to you is entirely up to you, of course. So I think that covers everything we need to in terms of pricing. One possible configuration that you could go with here that would save you around $50 US dollars, but does come with some compromises, is you could get the button module, the CLUBSPORT version of the rim, so the replica version of the rim, the Podium hub on its own, and then of course the QR2 Standard instead of the Pro that comes with the bundle. And then you could also, if you add the CLUBSPORT magnetic paddle module on top of that, it comes in at, in US dollars or euro, $739.75, which is only about $40 more expensive than the configuration here. So you're effectively getting yourself those magnetic shifters for an extra $40, but you are sacrificing the genuine Sparco wheel and you're stepping from the QR2 Pro down to the Standard, which, as I mentioned, doesn't make any practical difference in terms of driving, but doesn't look quite as flash on your rig. So that is one option that I thought was just worth considering. One other thing just to quickly mention here as well is, regardless of whether you go with one of the bundle packages or buy the components separately, you will still be building the wheel yourself. They do come individually boxed and you have to assemble all the components, but we'll take you through the process of doing that in just a minute. In fact, we might actually move across and get into that right now, I think. Let's get this thing disassembled and take a closer look at the build quality. So we've got the wheel disassembled now into its various modules. One thing just to be aware of is that I haven't separated the QR2 from the Podium up here. We covered that in a lot of detail in our QR2 review. So if you want to know exactly how that all goes together and all the details of that, check out that review linked down below. But for all intents and purposes here, basically you've got your quick release and hub, you've got your rim, and then you've got your rally module, and there's actually a little metal shim that sits between the two. The reason for that will become clear in just a second. So first thing that you'll notice about this guy is just how lightweight it is. So comes in at 280 grams, including the metal adapter here, or the shim. Now, one of the reasons this is so light is because it's actually mounting in front of the wheel, as you guys saw earlier. So let's take you through a little mock-up here. We've got our chosen hub here. This could also be the universal hub, of course. You then got whichever rim you choose, which goes in front. You then have your little adapter ring or shim, So that's going to bolt in using 3 of the studs from a standard 6 stud 70mm stud pattern, which provides plenty of rigidity. So as far as the actual construction and rigid part of the wheel is concerned, that's it. You're not actually putting any force through the button plate itself. And that means that they don't have to have additional reinforcement within the structure of this itself. It only needs to be rigid enough to support button presses without flexing, which it does. Yeah, so they don't have to have aluminium spacers or a spider frame or anything like that. So that then literally just bolts onto the face of the wheel like so, with the 4 bolts provided. And again, this all does come in the kit. And then that is essentially it. You just got to plug the cable into the hub, which we'll talk about in just a minute, and you are good to go. So yeah, 280 grams for this combined with this. And because of the fact that it's sitting in front of the wheel, it also makes it compatible with a wider variety of rims too. So you can imagine a lot of rims where the button plate sits in behind, the cutouts and the shape of the actual structure of the wheel itself. So this area here needs to be the right shape to clear buttons and whatnot. Whereas with this, because it's sitting in front, it actually is compatible with a bunch of wheels. So pretty much anything with a 70mm pattern. So you can imagine with this guy here, it actually works really well with this particular rim. And again, we went through all of these various Fanatec rims in a previous video, which I've linked down in the description for you guys. I think that's 270mm diameter, if I'm not mistaken, but all the way up to, I think this is a 320. You can see that works really nicely as well. And even this 300mm too, you can see integrates very, very nicely. So essentially, as long as it's got a 70mm stud pattern that you can access 3 of the bolts, you should be pretty much good to go. I can't think of too many scenarios where it would be a problem. And again, you can check out that previous video if you're wanting to see more details on what it actually looks like mounted. So in terms of the construction of the unit itself, this part is anodized aluminium, really nice gold finish. Not that you're ever really going to see it anyway, unless you look down on the top of the wheel, but you know, nice high quality materials there. That is obviously providing rigidity, as we discussed earlier. And then in terms of the materials themselves, we've got a 3mm thick genuine carbon fiber front plate here, and that gives it a nice high quality finish. We then have a plastic shroud around the back here. So a lot of wheels that come in at around this kind of combined price point, you would find a either cast aluminium anodized or CNC machined aluminium rear housing. Again, not necessary here. They want to save as much weight as possible. So I wouldn't say that that is a detractor from the product at all, whereas some other wheels that we've looked at where the shroud actually does provide part of the rigidity, that is something that I've complained about. So plastic here, we did have a look internally as well, and there was absolutely no cause for concern to my eye at least anyway, but you guys can see for yourselves here. You've got a motherboard and a daughter board. Daughter board just handles the 3 rotary encoders on the bottom. The screen is all integrated as well, so you've only actually got cabling between the motherboard and the daughter board. Everything else is either connected via headers or soldered directly to those PCBs. So it keeps things relatively simple and compact. And then if we spin back around to the front here, we do have plastic touch points throughout here. Now that was something that I did complain about with the, well, complain is maybe a strong word. It was something that I highlighted with the M4 GT3 wheel as well, because for a wheel at this kind of price point, I would have expected to have aluminium touch points for at least the rotary encoders. I mean, it's pretty standard to have plastic for the buttons themselves, so it's not really a point of complaint. But these, I was a little bit surprised that they weren't aluminium. And likewise with this guy as well, I mean, the quality is absolutely fine. And again, quite a few people did actually complain in the comments of my video on that particular wheel, saying that it's not really a complaint because obviously they want to keep the weight down as much as possible, being that it's a wheel that's intended for use in real life motorsport. So you can make your own judgment on that. For me personally, I would have preferred to have aluminium touch points for these rotary encoders, but they do have a nice high quality snap to them. They're not push buttons, so they are just multi-position switches / rotary encoders, and we'll cover the functionality a little bit later on in today's video in more detail for you. So with or without gloves, they feel absolutely fine. Then we move to the buttons themselves. Again, a really nice snap to them, exactly the same buttons as we have on that M4 GT3 wheel. So if you're familiar with that, you'll know what it's like, but most of you guys won't have used that wheel. So you can see there's not a whole lot of squish to it before it activates, just a really nice positive click. They all feel exactly the same as each other too. It doesn't sound overly echoey through the shell or anything like that either, so it has a nice high quality feel overall. Absolutely nothing to complain about there whatsoever. And then we have 2 5-way D-pads, 1 in each corner as well. So unlike a funky switch, these don't have rotary encoder functionality, just up, down, left, right, and push button on each one of those. So perfectly fine for navigating through menus and whatnot, but there isn't any additional rotary encoders here, just the 3 dials down the bottom, and that is it. You then have your tuning menu button just here, and then we've got our 1-inch OLED display here for navigating through those menus, making adjustments to your force feedback settings and wheel settings on the fly, as well as, of course, displaying that telemetry data. So that is the hardware of the Rally module itself. A couple of other things just to quickly mention as well. They do include a nice little sticker sheet here as well. So you can see there are some areas there for various different labels, and you can put some blank labels on there and mark those yourself if you want to as well. They do also include a little bag with some changeable switch caps here too, as well as some blanks. So if you want to swap out the standard array of buttons there, you can do that relatively easy too. They do also include a pair of plastic tweezers, as is often the case with a lot of wheels these days. I think Cube Controls were the first to do that, and now pretty much everybody's doing the same thing. That makes it a lot easier to apply those stickers as well. Now, one more thing I want to cover just quickly before we move on is the connection here. Now, if you've got a keen eye, you may have noticed that this is a USB-C connection. Very important that you understand that you can't just plug this into any USB-C interface. So if you've got, say, an Acertec wheel, for example, with that clever pass-through quick release that we've looked at previously, you can't just plug this into that. It is a proprietary protocol that they're using, even though it is a standard USB-C connection. So it plugs into a port on either the Podium hub or Universal hub, and then it communicates with the PC through their own proprietary protocol. So just be aware of that as well. So let's move on now and talk about rims. Now, we already referenced the various selections of different rims that you can use the Rally module with. And again, that video is linked in the description if you want to check out more detail. But I know a big question that you guys will have is, what is the difference between the genuine Sparco R383 and the Fanatec replica version of that same rim? Now, the first obvious thing that you're going to notice is the difference in grip material. So the genuine R383 has a suede finish, whereas the Fanatec replica has a genuine Alcantara finish. So they both have a pretty plush kind of feel to them. I have felt some suede material wheels in the past. The Taco wheel from Simicube comes to memory, as that was a suede material as well, but it felt quite rough and quite uncomfortable in the bare hands, I would go as far as to say, whereas this does have a very nice plush kind of smooth feeling to it. So not a massive difference in feeling holding both of those wheels, despite the difference in the grip material there. Now, generally suede is a little bit more durable, but given the plush nature of this particular suede that they're using on the genuine wheel, I don't really know whether that's going to make a significant difference there. And obviously we haven't put enough hours into these to really be able to tell you at this point in time. So we'll see how things go over time. I probably will put quite a bit of use into both of these rims, so we'll see how they stand the test of time. Other thing that you'll notice here as well is that the genuine article is made up of multiple sections. So you can see there's a cut there where they've wrapped this inner part, and same deal down the bottom there as well. If you spin it around, you can see a join on the back there too. There's no stitching on the inside of the rim at all. You can see a bit of a seam there, but I know a lot of people don't like to have that stitching around where their thumbs are on the inside of the wheel, so that is not the case on either of these. But if you have another look at the replica here, you can see this is actually a continuous single piece of Alcantara that wraps around. There is still a seam on the inside edge there, but you can see there's no cutouts around the outside. So that's actually quite a nice touch. Otherwise, you'll notice that there's a cutout for a horn on the genuine Sparco wheel, being a genuine race car part. No such cutout on the Fanatec. You'll notice also that the Sparco logo has been moved down on the Fanatec one. So little attention to detail things. What that means is that when you've got the button module sitting on there, the Sparco logo is still visible, whereas on the genuine article, even though it's not really covering it, you can see it just doesn't make quite so much sense, that logo placement. It does look a little bit better lower down. So little tiny attention to detail, things like that. Now look, in terms of the actual construction and materials, what they told me is that they went to great lengths to actually replicate exactly how Sparco manufactures the wheel in terms of the internal structure and everything. Now I can't vouch for that. I'm not an engineer that knows how to analyze those kinds of things. But what I can tell you is that the amount of squish that you have on the wheel itself actually does feel identical between the two. Just that slight material difference. Rigidity and everything appears to be identical between the two of them as well. We'll run some shots here of making the wheel bend and flex on the actual rig so you guys can see for yourselves, but no real discernible difference between the two there. Either material thickness is exactly the same as well. 5.1 millimeters thick by my measurement, for the internal structure there. Weight-wise, indistinguishable between the two. This genuine article comes in at 985 grams by my measurement, whereas the Fanatec replica wheel comes in at 975 grams. But in terms of the way they feel in your hands, absolutely identical between the two. One important difference between the two of them, and I'm sure there's already people that have written a comment before getting to this part of the video, there is a slight difference in the diameter between the two. Now, the genuine article is 330 millimeters. The replica is what they're calling 320 millimeters. In practice, I measure this one to be 330 pretty much exactly. This one to be 325 millimeters. So not a huge difference between the two of them. Again, they're saying that they went with a slightly smaller diameter just to make their replica a little bit more versatile for the context of sim racing. And look, I would agree with that. Generally, somewhere around the 300 millimeter mark is what I would consider to be most versatile. So something that you can use for anything from, say, Formula One cars all the way through to rally and drifting. The larger you go on the diameter, the more dampened the force feedback feeling is overall. It just gives you a little bit more leverage, makes the effects feel a little bit less sharp and a little bit more vague. The difference between 320 and 330 millimeters probably isn't going to be a significant change for you. So not really a reason to pick one over the other, I don't think. And even on a weaker wheelbase, we ran it all the way down to say 5 Newton meters, and I really couldn't tell a life-changing amount of difference between these two diameters. But look, all the little attention to detail things are all really good as well. Even just the little Sparco wrap up the top here is indistinguishable to my eyes, at least in terms of quality between the two of them. It even seems to be the same printing system that they've used between them too. So look, I mean, I guess the best way to describe it is if you didn't have the Fanatec logo on here, I wouldn't be able to tell you that this wasn't a genuine Sparco wheel. I think, there's just nothing on there that leaps out as not being genuine. Now that said, this isn't to be used in a real life race car. So if you are looking for something that you can also take off your sim rig and put into your drift car or something like that, then you definitely will want to go with the genuine article. Obviously, this is something that is properly tested and properly certified. Something like this is essentially a toy at the end of the day. So you should never, ever, ever be putting a wheel that's designed for your sim rig into your real life cars. Little differences like the way the metal bends and breaks on a replica wheel like this. Obviously, they aren't tested for things like that. So you may end up with sharp shards where obviously if you smack your head into it, that could kill you. So we don't want to have anything like that. Whereas something like this is designed to bend in a certain way, break in a certain way, and whatnot, which is part of the reason why there's a price difference between the two as well. But for the context of sim racing, I have absolutely no reason why I would choose this guy over this guy. I'd say save your money. Now, at the time that we're making this video, unfortunately, this guy is sold out. I'm hoping that that won't be the case for too long, but if you can get your hands on it, I would say this one is probably the way to go. Whether or not it's worth the difference for you in terms of, if you want the Podium hub and the QR2 Pro over the Universal hub, that's up to you. But no reason to recommend the genuine Sparco wheel over the Fanatec one in terms of practicality. It's purely just down to whether you want to have a real life race car wheel or a replica in your rig, and it's as simple as that. So let's quickly talk about construction, actually putting things together quickly, just so you can see how that happens, because that is something that you will have to do even if you buy a bundle. And then we'll get it up over on the sim rig and do some driving. So we'll quickly power through this now, remembering again that the quick release will ship separately as well. So check out our QR2 dedicated video for all the details on that. But assuming you've got your QR2 already mounted, or your QR1 for that matter mounted to whichever hub you have, it's as simple as just dropping your chosen rim on top of the hub. Now it's exactly the same process with the universal hub as well. So if you've got this guy, you're just gonna obviously need to make sure that your cluster pack isn't interfering with the wheel anywhere. And it's as simple as just dropping it on top and then dropping the bolts internally. But we're gonna do this with the Podium hub just for the sake of the video. So drop this guy on top. We then grab our metal shim, making sure that the little arrows pointing up are on the top of the wheel. That will slide in, and it has got some little bits here which go into the countersunk bolt holes. So that will force everything to line up correctly. We then grab our countersunk screws, drop them in. Now I should mention at this point as well, if you are wanting to mount shifters on your Podium hub, you should do that before you mount the wheel, because you will need to get in underneath this cover to install those correctly. But you can check out our full review of the Podium hub for all the details on that if you're wondering exactly how that works. Pretty simple. You just got to undo 3 screws on the cap here, run the cables through, plug them in, and you are good to go. So that is done. And that's, as I was saying before, that gives you all the rigidity in the wheel itself. The button plate then just screws in over the top like so. So this guy drops on, just making very, very sure here that the cable is tucked in to its little recess there, so it's not being squished or damaged. Again, those little raised areas will slot into the plastic sleeves here, so it does align itself automatically. And then we just grab our 4 Torx bolts with the little key that is included and simply secure this in place. Now, we don't want to put a bunch of torque on these, remembering again that it is just plastic that we're going through. There is a plastic spacer between the 2 sides, as we saw when we opened it up, but you don't need to put a bunch of torque there because it's not load bearing in any way other than just the force of you pressing on the buttons. So we'll screw that up like so. And then all we need to do is just flip the wheel up, plug in the USB-C connection, remembering again that it is a proprietary data protocol there, so you can't just plug that into any USB-C port on any wheel. And that is it, you are good to go. So let's do exactly that now. Let's jump over onto the rig, take you through how the software works and what it's like to drive with. Okay, so all set up on the rig now. I just want to quickly run you through some of the key features on the wheel and obviously take a look at the software, run you through how all that works as well. So if you're familiar with Fanatec gear, there's nothing that's particularly new or different here, pretty much the standard experience. But firstly, a quick look at the little 1-inch OLED display. So we've got our tuning menu button here. A couple of things we can do with this display. Firstly, it can display telemetry. I'll run you through how that's all configured in just a second. So when we press this little button here, that's going to bring up our tuning menu and we can switch between automatic preset mode, which basically just runs the force feedback settings that they recommend for each game. And then we can also thumb through 5 individual presets too. That's really powerful because it means if you're running different cars or different sims, you want to have different settings for each individual car. You don't have to alt tab out of the game and make changes. If you jump into a race and you're just about to start, you realize, oh crap, I didn't change my settings. You can quickly do it from the wheel without having to alt tab out, which is very powerful. Then if we go across to the right hand side from there, we can make adjustments to all of our key force feedback settings, just the same as if we were on the PC. So we've got our wheel sensitivity, we can wind that up or down. That is just the sensitivity of the rotation. We're going to leave that on auto for now. And then go through all the rest of the settings here too. So force feedback strength, full force feedback intensity, force effect, spring effect, damper effect, and so forth all the way through. So if you want to know more information about exactly what all those settings do, check out our recent looks at the DD and DD Plus wheelbases from Fanatec. We run through all the settings there. So that is what you can do in terms of tuning menu. Once you're happy with it, you just press it again to exit out. Let's jump over onto the software now and I'll show you all the rest of the configuration. You would have already noticed the RGB LED backlights for all the buttons, so we'll run you through all of that as well. So this is the Fanatec software, which is a separate download from the main driver software. It is a opt-in thing, so you don't have to download this software, but if you want to take full advantage of all the settings on this particular button box, then you're definitely going to want to download Fanatec. So the standard driver looks like this, doesn't give you access to any of those tweaks or adjustments. Everything else is done in Fanatec. So I'm not sure still why they don't integrate everything into the one software package. It's been a complaint of mine for a number of years now. You know, Fanatec in itself is a great piece of software and I'm glad that it exists. It definitely drove things forward, not only in terms of just ease of adjustability, but also having presets that you could download and whatnot. But a lot of other software packages now from other manufacturers do integrate everything into the one download. It does make things just a little bit more simple. The difficulty with this is that if you've got a version of Fanatec that doesn't match the version of the driver that you've installed, you can have problems and vice versa. It'd just be a lot cleaner if everything was one package. So a minor complaint there, but a complaint nonetheless. So you can see down here all the devices that we've got connected to the system at this point in time. Access to the tuning menu from here as well. So you can see as we make adjustments on the wheel here, you'll see that replicated through on there. So if I was to adjust sensitivity, for example, you can see the sensitivity is also going up and down on the screen there. Again, we'll just leave that on auto. So it kind of makes sense how all this works, and you can see the auto setup plus those 5 different presets all here as well. So you'll remember earlier in the video, I also referenced the different modes that you could operate these switches in mechanically too. This is where you make that change. So underneath steering wheel here, you can see multi-position switch mode. So encoder mode is basically just a button press signal in each direction. So as you rotate it in one direction, it goes up. As you rotate it in the other direction, it goes down. Basically what that means in terms of what the sim interprets is that it doesn't actually know its mechanical position. It just knows whether you've moved it in one direction or the other. So you would map that inside the game. What it means is that if you go into a car change your engine map, for example, and then go back out of the car, come back in again, it's going to default back to the default setting, and the number that you have on the wheel doesn't necessarily correspond with what's going on in the car anymore, which can be a little bit frustrating, but it's important that we have that mode available because not all sims understand multi-position switch mode. So then for multi-position switch mode, we've got two options here available, pulse and constant. So pulse will send a single pulse for each position, so only tells the sim once what you've done, and then that is it. Constant, you've probably guessed, continuously sends that signal. So it's just going to depend on the sim title you're running, which one of those modes you want to select, but it's great that they have all three of those options available there to maximize compatibility. Simple as that. So dynamic force feedback, vibration, and game profile aren't relevant to the wheel plate specifically. Again, if you want to understand more about that, check out our looks at the wheelbases. But we're going to go to the LED tab now, and this gives us a breakdown of all the things that we can adjust here. So you can see each individual LED can be adjusted. So if we click on, say, this guy, for example, you can adjust a constant color from any color that you want from these presets, or you can just slide the values of R, G, and B up or down. You can also adjust brightness there too. We also have the option for telemetry-based feedback on these buttons as well. So as you can see here, at the moment I've got it disabled, but we could have that light flash for wheel spin, wheel lock, pit lane indicator, pit limiter, anti-lock brakes, and so forth all the way down the list. We also have flag LEDs available here too. So say, for example, you wanted to have your button plate light up yellow when there's a yellow flag condition and so forth, you can do that too. The only thing it doesn't do is spotter, so having a car left and right flashing on the wheel, which some other wheels on the market do these days based on telemetry fed through SimHub. So this is all done through their own software, not compatible with SimHub. So that's an option that you can configure individually for every single one of the buttons and dials here. Now there's also the option here for Rev LED too. So you can have this set so that it will light up whatever color you want when you reach a specific RPM. So you could even have it configured so that it scrolls across or goes from the sides to the middle or vice versa, depending on how you set this up. So a bit of trial and error to get it going, but you get the idea here. It just gives you a little bit more visually to let you know what's going on in lieu of an RPM strip across the top of the wheel, again, as you might find on some other wheels. So that's a basic rundown on the options in terms of the RGB backlights. Then if we click on the OLED display here, we've got all of our options for telemetry-based data. So we can either enable or disable the display, obviously. And then this is basically a hierarchy system here. So these are all the various different bits of telemetry which you can display on the wheel. And then the order in which you select them stipulates the preference or order of priority that they're displayed on the wheel. So at the moment, we've got it set up to constantly show our speed unless we're under a condition that would trigger one of these other ones. So constantly show speed. When I change gear, show the change of gear on the display. So we'll see the speed, and then as we change the gear, it'll go 1, 2, 3, and so forth. And that's the only two that I've got selected here presently. But if I was to click on number 2 as a position, say for example, then that would show the position that I am on the track when I make an overtake. And then for example, if I wanted to show me the lap that I was on, I could click on number 3 for my lap number, and then that would show as I cross the start finish line what lap I'm entering. Or for example, if I wanted to have the lap number on the display all the time, I would click on the constant button and that would do that for me. So you can see all the various different options that we have here: fuel level, traction control, anti-lock braking, DRS allowed, ERS, and so forth. And then down the bottom here, we've got a couple of additional adjustments which you don't really need to go into, just to make sure that everything that we're seeing on the display is as fine-tuned as possible. So that is a basic rundown on how everything works. Very simple to set up. Plenty of trial and error there in terms of what's going to suit your needs best, but there's a lot to play around with. And yeah, basically you can customize things to your heart's content. That is the software. Let's get into the driving experience and conclusions. Okay, so in terms of the driving experience, look, I've tested out this rally module now with a variety of different rims, both from Fanatec's lineup as well as various aftermarket bits and pieces as well. Obviously, one thing just to be aware of that we didn't mention earlier on in the video is that depending on the amount of dish that your rim has will stipulate whether or not this can fit. So if you've got a really big, deep dish 350mm wheel or something like that, you may have issues getting it to fit in, but otherwise, absolutely no problems. Every other 70mm 6 stud wheel that we tested it with was absolutely fine. Now, ergonomically, the experience there will obviously vary depending on the rim that you have as well. If we grab this one quickly and hold it in my hands, you can see that it is a stretch there. I do have to roll my hands around the wheel to reach any of the buttons, including the little D-pads, which may bother some people on a larger 330mm wheel like this. The 320mm version is pretty much the same experience as well. Remember, I measured that to be about 325mm anyway. But yeah, if you're expecting something that you can just quickly, make adjustments on the fly without having to adjust your hand position, then there are other wheels that work better than this ergonomically, for that reason alone. But then obviously the counter argument to that is that this is the genuine wheel that they used in the real life race car. And if it was good enough to win, then it should be good enough for us sim racers as well. So look, as an all-rounder, I think they really nail it. You know, the quality of the touch points and everything all feels really nice. I would have liked it to have aluminium touch points for the 3 multi-position switch / rotary encoders, but I mean, that's just a personal preference of mine. It's a very subjective thing. I think, you know, for the price, there are a couple of things they could have done to make it feel a little bit more quality in hand, but then that would have the implication of additional weight. So, you know, on a sim rig, not so important. In a real life race car, obviously weight saving is extremely important. But look, in terms of the way the buttons feel and everything, overall impressions are exactly as I said earlier on in the video, absolutely fine. The buttons do have a really nice tactile feel. Would have been nice to have a RPM strip across the top. A lot of other wheels at this kind of price point do have something like that, so that's one thing to be aware of there. However, there is of course the 1-inch OLED display, which does give you telemetry data as well as access to the tuning menu, so you can make adjustments to your force feedback settings and wheel settings on the fly, which is a big strength within the Fanatec ecosystem. So I mean, we could talk about it all day, but at the end of the day, I think it does a really good job of all the things that it needs to do. Very versatile button plate as well. Mounting in front of the wheel, as we mentioned earlier, makes it a lot more versatile in terms of the rims that you can mount it on. And even something like this, which is obviously never, you know, designed to go with something that is intended for rally, but it actually works really well on this particular wheel. And again, check out our previous video where we looked at that in a little bit more detail. But after this review, I probably actually will put the button plate back on this rim and use it for some Formula style driving, because it's actually a really fun experience. So that gives you an idea of just how versatile the button plate is. And I think it's as simple as that, guys. There's really not a whole lot more to talk about in terms of the driving experience, because it's obviously going to depend on what you're driving and what rim you've got it mounted to, but it does all the things it needs to do and does them well. What I would recommend is just do a little bit of browsing through various different rims which are available, and you know, just consider whether you do need to spend the extra money for the genuine Sparco wheel. Now obviously with the bundle discount that they have, it does sort of bring things a little bit more even a playing field, but there are plenty of cheap rims available online which will bring the price point down even further, even without that bundle discount. So just be mindful of that. Do a bit of research there yourself before you just dive straight in and buy. I guess the one complaint that I do have is that they don't include the CLUBSPORT magnetic paddle module in the price. Even though obviously the real life race car doesn't use it, I feel like probably a lot of people that are buying this wheel will ultimately want to have shifters on. Now, obviously you do have the option of the universal hub version of it if you want to go down that road. I'm just a real fan of the way the Podium hub looks on your rig. It just has a really nice clean feel overall. You get shifters with this version. If you're buying the Podium version, it just would be nice if they included those. You don't have to even mount them if you don't want to use them, but there's going to be some scenario where, you know, inevitably you're going to want to drive a street car or something that uses a similar diameter wheel, and you're going to wish you had magnetic shifters. So having to pay extra to get them is a bit of a disappointment, let's say. The only other thing that I guess isn't really a complaint, but just something to be aware of, is that it is a modular system, so you will have to assemble it yourself. But as you saw in the video, very easy to do so. You should be able to get the job done, including mounting the quick release, in less than 20 minutes pretty easily, even if you're inexperienced. But otherwise, I think they've done a really good job. Obviously, it is somewhat of a niche product. There are plenty of other wheels available in the market, both within the Fanatec ecosystem and elsewhere, that will get you as much, if not more, functionality than what this has in terms of, you know, things like RPM strips and, you know, additional buttons, rotary encoders and whatnot. But, you know, if you're after something that's nice and versatile that you're going to be able to use with a selection of different rims without having to pay for an entire wheel every single time, I think it does a really good job, and it's as simple as that, guys. So I hope that today's video has helped you out. If it has, leave a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to the channel as well so you don't miss out on future videos like this. Again, do let us know down in the comments below if you have ordered stuff from Fanatec recently, what your experience has been like. I think that is, you know, sharing your experiences in the comments down below is a lot more valuable than me ranting on about my own observations for 20 minutes. So please do take the time to share so that people that are watching this video and looking at buying some of their gear can be as informed as possible. On that subject, if you do decide you want to pick up any of the gear that we looked at in today's video, we do have those affiliate links available down in the description below, which is again an awesome way of helping support our work at no additional cost. And that again is something that's just available to you guys if you find what we do beneficial and you want to help support us. So we really do appreciate your support there. But above all, thank you very much for watching as always, and I will see you again very soon. Bye.